I've seen bigger stakes on a Vegas weekend, Chad said, spinning my 1% equity certificate in his fingers like a cocktail napkin he was about to ash into. It was laminated. He smirked anyway. The room laughed. I didn't. 12 years. 12 years of late nights in that godforsaken glass box of an office with HVAC that sounded like a dying cow and smelled like burnt printer ink and finance bros cologne. 12 years of building Daxon Core's backbone from scratch, laying every API hook, integration route, compliance rail, and back-end duct tape that made their fake pretty dashboards actually work. And now I was a punchline in loafers. That laminated slip of paper he mocked, it was the culmination of blood-soaked founder-level promises from the last CEO, someone who actually knew what I did. He's retired now. Lives in Sedona. Sends Christmas cards from an email that ends in Mac. But here comes Chad, walking in like a conference booth come to life. New CFO, teeth too white, jokes too loud, MBA from somewhere that still thinks synergy is a sexy word. He made it clear within the first week. He didn't know what I did, and he didn't care. My job title was VP of Systems Integration, but to him, I was legacy. Deadweight, some frumpy reminder of the company's awkward puberty before it got hot for investors. The day he dropped that Vegas line, I'd just been told, via calendar invite, no less, that I was no longer required in strategy syncs. The same meetings I used to run. No one looked me in the eye. Not even Jacob from legal, and he's the one who cried when I helped him with his prenup. Oh, by the way, if you're still listening and enjoying this chaos spiral, give it a like, yeah, maybe subscribe. 90% of y'all ghost these stories harder than Chad ghosted our SOC2 audit. That little click means the world to the team behind this, and it keeps me going. Thanks truly. Anyway, back to the humiliation. After that meeting, they started scrubbing me. Quietly, strategically. My name vanished from the leadership page, replaced with some guy named Brent who used to do Salesforce at his cousin's startup. My internal bio disappeared. The slideshow at the company all hands called me a valued contributor to early phases of Daxon Core's growth, like I was a ghost of HR PowerPoints past. And the cap table? Oh, the cap table. Chad rolled it out like a game show prize reveal. Shiny, restructured, and noticeably missing one Isabella V. Tran. Problem is I wasn't actually gone. Not legally. Not contractually. And sure as hell not equitably. Because 6 years ago, while Chad was still doing keg stands at Wharton Mixers, I was sitting across from Alan, our now retired CEO, signing a deal he practically whispered to me. 1% equity, fully vested, voting rights. Clause 14.6, subsection B. It kicked in once Daxon Core hit $10 MARR and retained 100 plus enterprise clients. We did that 3 years ago. And the clause, it had teeth, big ones. It included a little line nobody paid attention to because I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about anything unless it involved servers crashing or clients threatening SLA breach. But this line mattered. In the event of a majority sale or acquisition, all shareholders with voting equity had to provide written consent. All, even me, even my sad little 1%. But I said nothing. Just smiled politely when Chad tossed my equity aside like yesterday's bagel. Let him think he won. He started calling me legacy systems. Cute, so I went quiet. Let him laugh. Let them all laugh because the joke was loading. The first time I realized they were erasing me wasn't when my office got moved. It wasn't even when Chad accidentally left me off a thread with the board. It was when I Googled the company to pull a press quote for a client and saw my face missing from the leadership page. Gone. Poof. No email. No announcement. Not even a passive-aggressive Slack. Just Brent the Salesforce bro grinning under my old job title like he earned it from a claw machine full of LinkedIn endorsements. I checked the org chart in Workday. You ever see your name replaced with TBD? Yeah, TBD, like I died and no one wanted to admit it before the autopsy. Then came the email. Subject line, standard transition documents. No hi Isabella. No thank you for your years of service. Just a cold PDF packet stuffed with NDA refreshers, IP confirmations, and a cheery little release waiver at the end. It asked for my signature to confirm I agreed to waive all equity-related claims and acknowledge no future claim to compensation, participation, or corporate governance decisions. It read like a breakup text from someone who borrowed your Netflix and then married your sister. I didn't sign it, I read it. Then I read it again. And on the third read, tucked between a paragraph about vesting schedules and something about governance disengagement, I found a clause number I recognized. 14.6b. They'd copy-pasted part of my original equity clause without the bit about unanimous consent, like I wouldn't notice. Cute. I didn't raise hell, didn't reply. Just dragged the PDF into my insurance folder, renamed it Daxon Delusion 1, PDF, and moved on. You have to understand they weren't firing me. That would have required backbone. They were paper-cutting me to death. They took me off project dashboards. My GitHub access was quietly downgraded from admin to read-only. I got locked out of our SSO portal for a day and had to email Jacob in legal to get it back. His reply, we're optimizing visibility, whatever that means. Even my assistant, Claire, sweet girl, loves sea otters, started asking Brent for approvals. When I gently reminded her I was still her manager, she blinked like I was breaking the fourth wall. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure anymore. Neither was I, Claire. Neither was I. Then the whispers started. Elevator chat, bathroom murmurs, acquisition, late-stage talks, final numbers being reviewed. I heard them all. Of course I did. I built the damn listening tools. But none of them said a word to me because I was too legacy. Because I might complicate the optics. Because Brent had great synergy with the CFO. Synergy? God, I hate that word. Chad strutted through the halls like he'd personally invented the idea of scaling. Like the 12 years of back-end grit that got us here were some charming relic of a less visionary era. He hosted cocktail hours with the new VPs, laughed with the board, referred to me as our systems historian in a meeting I wasn't even invited to. And still, I said nothing because you don't light a match during a gas leak. You wait, quietly, patiently, you let them forget you, you let them think you've rolled over, and then when they try to close the deal, you show them who still has the keys. 6 years ago, Alan, the original CEO, called me into his office. No calendar invite, no pretense. Just a sticky note on my keyboard that said, "Got a minute?" His office was a mess. Papers everywhere. One of those stand-up desks stuck halfway between standing and sitting like it couldn't commit. But Alan, he was clear as glass that day. He poured me a coffee, burnt, of course, and said, "Look, you've built half the company's nervous system. You've made the integrations run like blood. You're not flashy. You don't play politics, but I've been around long enough to know who holds the damn thing together." Then he slid the packet across the desk. 1%, vesting complete, full voting rights. "Keep this quiet," he said. "It's not just equity, it's insurance." Insurance against what? I didn't ask, I was too stunned. The clause that mattered was buried on page 7, footnoted in language dry enough to mulch a forest. In the event of a majority equity transfer, including but not limited to mergers, acquisitions, or asset sales exceeding 50% of total operational valuation, unanimous consent of all voting shareholders shall be required. I remember underlining that line in green pen, not red, green, because Alan said one day this might be worth more than any salary. That day had arrived. Now in my apartment, still in the same one bedroom I'd had since the series of days, with a monitor that buzzed when the neighbors microwaved things, I sat down with the original agreement again. Clause 14.6b. Still there, still binding. Never amended. I checked our legal backend. Nothing filed against my name since the day I signed it. No updates, no superseding contracts, no revocations. The legal team had simply forgotten I existed, and that's when it clicked. All this erasure, the downgrades, the standard release, the missing invites, it wasn't personal. It was corporate amnesia. They didn't hate me. They just convinced themselves I was irrelevant, that I wouldn't be a problem, that I was safe to ignore, so I leaned in. I stopped correcting org charts. Let Brent take credit for 3 tools I built myself. When HR forgot my birthday, I baked them cookies. I smiled at Chad's jokes. I nodded through meetings where they discussed phasing out legacy processes, i.e., everything I designed. But behind the scenes, I started checking access logs, watching who was downloading cap tables, who was exporting HR summaries. I dug into the deal prep folders, quietly ran audits on what legal had compiled. I wasn't trying to sabotage anything. I wasn't leaking or breaking NDAs. I was preparing, because leverage isn't a hammer, it's a scalpel, and Chad, he thought he'd locked the door. He forgot I built the hinges. The conference room smelled like too much cologne and not enough reality. Chad strutted up to the screen like he was about to unveil a vaccine. His slides were crisp, animated, and completely full of shit. He kicked things off with a slow fade from our logo to a bloated buzzword salad, empowering scalable solutions for a frictionless future. Then came the cap table slide. He called it cleaned up. "Here's where we are now," he said, clicking to a sleek pie chart. "Founders, early investors, key leadership. We've streamlined equity distribution for transparency and buyer confidence. No Isabella Tran, no 1%, no mention at all." I was sitting in the back, behind a potted plant so fake even the dust looked painted on. No one noticed me. They probably thought I was catering staff or someone's very confused aunt. Chad kept talking. I stopped listening because I wasn't on the slides, sure, but I was still in the system. Later that night, I logged into the equity portal using the same credentials I'd had for 6 years. No password reset, no access revoked. Amateurs. Pulled every file tied to my name, every vesting schedule, every voting note, the original share issuance, the clause, the board approvals, the tax forms, all of it. Then I exported it, triple backed it up. Once to my work drive, once to a private folder on an encrypted cloud, and once to a USB drive shaped like a rubber chicken. Long story. I opened the metadata logs. Last time anyone looked at my file was 3 years ago. They hadn't deleted me. Just forgotten. Good. Let them forget. Because the best kind of ghost isn't the kind that haunts, it's the kind that waits. I started taking notes in a dead Slack channel no one used anymore, just to leave a trail if anyone went digging. Logged timestamps. Watched who accessed the due diligence folders. They were so obsessed with scrubbing the surface, they never checked the foundation. That was me. I saw meetings fly by where they prepped for final investor alignment. I watched Brent rehearse lines in the hallway mirror like he was auditioning for Shark Tank. Chad began hosting Fireside Fridays in the break room. He wore jeans, smiled too hard, called everyone rock stars, all while forgetting the quiet woman still listed as a voting stakeholder on every single legal doc related to the sale. I stopped showing up to optional meetings. No one noticed. I turned off Slack notifications. No one pinged me. I became invisible, which was perfect. Because ghosts don't knock, they walk through walls. Subject line, just circling back smiling face with smiling eyes. HR always manages to weaponize emojis, don't they? The email was warm in that suffocating way. A freshly microwaved burrito is warm, steamy on the outside, but hollow and cold if you poke it. Hi, Isabella. Just a friendly reminder to review and sign the transition waiver we sent last month. No rush, but we'd love to close the loop before next Friday's milestone event. Let us know if you have any questions. I read it 3 times. Not a single word about what the waiver was. No mention of equity, of voting rights, of the fact that I still legally had the ability to grind their entire milestone event into dust. Just a cheerful nudge. Like they were reminding me to RSVP to the company picnic I wasn't invited to. I replied with 4 words, I'll think about it. Then I hit archive and whispered, promise. 2 days later, legal pinged me. Not even a named person, just legal at Dax&Core.com. Please confirm receipt of waiver documentation and expected turnaround. I didn't reply. Because let me tell you something about corporate silence. It only works if they think you're not watching. And Chad thought silence meant surrender. He strutted through the office like a man who'd already popped champagne. Called me Miss Legacy once in the hallway like he thought it was cute. I smiled. I didn't punch a wall, didn't throw a chair. But that night, I opened my kitchen junk drawer where my original contract had lived for 6 years, nestled between old spare keys and 3 Taco Bell gift cards, and reread the clause again. Slowly, out loud. Then I said the words I hadn't said in years. Not today. Mother, if I stopped myself, shook it off, laughed. That was the only time I let it out. After that, I went still. I updated my calendar with a single entry hidden from shared view, final week. I had 2 weeks of unused vacation. No one had approved it, but no one cared enough to stop me. They'd already moved on in their heads. That week was when the deal was supposed to close. Final buyer sign-off, signature day, PR blast. The whole were so humbled to join this next chapter circus. I planned to be far, far away from the confetti cannons and free Prosecco, but not disconnected. Because while they were high-fiving under the projector, I'd be holding the one card that still mattered. And when they came crawling, and they would, I'd be ready. Not with vengeance, with leverage. It started with a spreadsheet. The kind only lawyers get excited about, 6 tabs deep, conditional formatting and legalese that makes your eyes glaze over. The acquiring company's due diligence team was meticulous, which is corporate speak for paranoid. They were finalizing everything: tax docs, IP ownership, software licenses, lease agreements, and most important, equity holders. That's where they found me. Line 47, Isabella V. Tran Equity, 1.00% status. Active waiver. Not received, it was a red cell. Bolded, that single red cell lit up their legal Slack like a Christmas tree. Internal message threads started flying. Who is this? Why no release on file? Was this stake already retired? Can we enforce the sale without her signature? The answer? No. The clause required unanimous equity holder consent for controlling interest sale. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a handshake deal. It was baked into the original charter, signed, countersigned, and filed with the Delaware Secretary of State. Their legal team flagged it, highlighted it, boxed it in yellow, and sent it to Chad with a subject line that read, urgent, trans signature required to close. I wasn't CC'd, of course, but I saw it. You'd be amazed what access you still have when people forget to remove you from the shared drive. Chad's response was 3 lines of pure arrogance. She's nobody. Just a legacy ops person. Probably thought she signed already. I'll have HR nudge again. The kind of thing a man says when he doesn't know he's bleeding. What Chad didn't realize, what none of them realized, is that the buyer's CEO wasn't like him. He didn't care about vibes and pitch decks and who looked best in a blazer. He cared about risk. And I was a red flag waving right in his face, so he did something radical. He reached out, not through lawyers, not through intermediaries, not even through LinkedIn. I got a call. Direct, blocked number, I answered. This is Isabella. Silence for a beat, then a voice, measured, polite, but with the kind of tone that only comes from signing checks with more zeros than most people will ever see. Hi, Miss Tran. This is Andrew M., CEO of Veritonics. We're finalizing the acquisition of Dax&Core, and your name came up during our diligence review. I'd like to schedule a conversation at your convenience. He didn't ask for a waiver. He asked for a meeting, smart man. I said, let's talk tomorrow. I'll send a time. Then I hung up and opened a folder on my desktop labeled "Oh hell yes." Inside was everything: the clause, the cap table printouts, my original contract, Alan's notes, my voting rights. All annotated, time-stamped, and backed up 6 ways from Sunday. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. I'd been treated like a ghost, a nobody. Now, the CEO of the company about to drop 8 figures was asking me for permission. And I wasn't giving it away for free. The call came precisely at 8:01 a.m. No assistant, no scheduler, no PR fluff. Just a clean, quiet ring on my personal cell. I'd already made coffee, black, bitter, burnt like my patience, and was staring out the window watching the neighborhood golden retriever take its daily dump on my patch of lawn. I answered like I'd been expecting it. "This is Isabella." "Good morning, Miss Tran. This is Andrew Martin from Veritonics." His voice was low and calm, someone used to boardrooms where people nodded before he finished speaking. But there was a current underneath, something taut. The sound of a man who just found a missing gear in his Rolex. "I appreciate you taking the time," he said. "I didn't say you're welcome. I didn't say I've been waiting for this. I just said, of course." Pause. Then he got to it. "We're scheduled to close tomorrow. I understand you have a 1% equity holding with voting rights and no release currently on file. I'd like to share our proposed terms with you directly, if that's all right." "Send it." I hung up. 3 minutes later, the term sheet landed in my inbox. It was shiny, polished, covered in phrases like advisory transition and legacy stakeholder goodwill and optional liquidity conversion timeline. It baked in a few bones: a 5-figure bonus, an option to join the buyer's advisory council, 1 year of access to the health plan. It was polite, it was hollow, it was also insulting. So I opened a fresh draft reply attached a PDF titled Clause 14.6b executed copy PDF and wrote one line: "Let's discuss the clause." No hello, no sign-off, no emojis. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Same number, Miss Tran. Would you be open to a brief meeting before the transaction date?" I checked my calendar. It was blank intentionally. I'd cleared it for exactly this reason. "I can do tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my conference line." "Would you prefer an NDA or representation?" he asked. "No," I said, "just you and just the facts." He hesitated, not because he was unsure, but because he recognized what that meant. This wasn't about feelings, this was leverage. After I hung up, I sat for a while, let the quiet settle. Then I pulled out a yellow legal pad, not digital, not typed, and I wrote down 5 words. "Here are my terms, Andrew. Not I demand, not I'm angry, not you owe me, just the facts," because I wasn't burning anything down. I wasn't here to ruin the deal, but I was going to rewrite the ending. And this time, I'd be the one holding the pen. The boardroom smelled like victory cologne and desperation. 10 men and 2 women, all squeezed into $1,000 suits that didn't quite hide the sweat. Laptops open, deal packets fanned out like war maps. Bottles of sparkling water sweating harder than Chad. Andrew Martin, the buyer CEO, sat at the head of the table. Calm, crisp, not a hair out of place. He didn't look like a man who'd just flown in overnight, slept 4 hours, and had his entire acquisition stalled by a woman no one had invited to the ribbon cutting. Chad was already mid-sentence when I arrived. Something about finalizing the liquidity tiers. His voice trailed off the second the door opened. I walked in without ceremony. No blazer, no portfolio. Just a plain black notebook and the kind of look that says, "I know exactly how long this is going to take." Andrew didn't stand, didn't smile, just slid a printed cap table across the table toward Chad like a man dealing the last card in a poker game. "It all hinges on her," he said. Chad frowned. "What?" Andrew tapped the paper. Line 47. Tran Isabella, 1% voting equity. No waiver, no signature. Clause 14.6b. I believe the term is binding. Chad's face did something I've only seen twice, once when we missed a compliance deadline in 2018, and once when he accidentally referred to the VP of sales as Rachel in bed during a company retreat. He flipped through the papers like he could unprint them. "There's got to be, this must have been superseded. She signed something I didn't," I said. 12 eyes turned. The room fell into that awful, sterile silence where every click of an HVAC vent sounds like a gunshot. I sat down at the far end of the table, didn't lean in, didn't posture. I just looked at Chad and said nothing, because silence, used correctly, is not submission. It's a scalpel. I watched as his breath stuttered. As his fingers clenched around a Montblanc pen he couldn't afford before this job. He turned to Jacob from legal. "Didn't we send her the release?" Jacob's eyes darted like a rodent in a spotlight. We did," she responded, said she'd think about it. "And she didn't follow up?" Andrew spoke before anyone else could. "You don't follow up on a binding clause, you negotiate it." He turned to me not unkindly. "Miss Tran, do you have your terms?" I didn't pull out a folder. I didn't hand over a list. I just looked across the room and let it stretch. 30 seconds of silence. Maybe more, long enough for Chad to start to sweat through his starch. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my old company badge, still active, still coded to the back-end systems. I placed it on the table like a nameplate, then folded my hands and waited. Let them panic. Let them remember. Let them feel the weight of forgetting me. I had no intention of stopping the deal. But no one was walking away from that table without acknowledging exactly who the hell I was. Andrew turned to me like we'd just wrapped a board game instead of a multimillion-dollar acquisition. Calm, composed, every bit the kingmaker who understood that all final moves must be deliberate. "Your vote?" he asked. That was it. No preamble, no persuasion, just a quiet prompt for the final domino. I smiled, barely. "Depends," I said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. 12-point font, double-spaced, no fluff, no emotion, just facts. Andrew read it slowly. My terms weren't extravagant, not even greedy, just surgical. First, a 2-year consulting retainer, paid quarterly, non-contingent on project deliverables. I'd show up when needed, but only when I decided something needed fixing. Second, title preservation. On paper and in press, I wasn't going to be buried under former employee while Brent soaked up praise for things he didn't build. I would be listed as co-architect of Daxon Core's system architecture. Period. Third, option liquidity acceleration for my team. Yes, my team, even the ones they pushed out. If they had options, they vested. No clawbacks. And fourth, Chad's immediate resignation. The room didn't gasp. This wasn't a movie, there was just stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when gravity shows up. Andrew looked at me, then at Chad, then back at the paper. He nodded once, like a man crossing the final T in a very expensive sentence. Chad finally found his voice, or tried to. He opened his mouth, raised one hand like he was about to explain, argue something, anything. But nothing came out. His jaw moved, but the words didn't follow. I tilted my head, watching him flounder in that bottomless second between panic and realization. The same second he probably saw in other people before he steamrolled them. I leaned back, collected, and looked at him the same way he looked at my 1% stake in that first meeting. Like it was a joke. Then I spoke, soft and flat like closing a ledger. I've seen bigger men try to bluff their way through. I stood, picked up my badge, and slid the final page of the agreement back toward Andrew. Never ends well for them either. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.